Welcome back, everybody. It's lovely to see you again here today. You're looking rather dashing today, you reckon, Ben? You're looking rather dashing today too. Today we have something we're quite excited about. This, my friends, is the FSP S380 curved glass dual chamber m-atx case. Now, we've seen dual chamber cases before, Benji. We've seen curved glass cases before. So what's the kicker?
In Australia, we've been told by FSP that their target price for these cases is 125 Aussie dollars. It's about 84 US dollars for all you 50 star flaggers out there watching. This price is ridiculous for a curved glass case. For comparison, the Montech 95 King is a whooping 120 US dollars. The Sky 3 that was announced just now at Computex will be roughly 40 US dollars more. And the 𝐁𝐮𝐢 TK1, another curved glass m-atx case, is around 120 US dollars as well.
Well, we've talked about the kicker. What's the catch? Well, first off, this is an m-atx case, which will limit your options somewhat in terms of motherboard compatibility. There is a S380 coming later in the year, which we hope to do a review for too. That will be an ATX sized case, but for today, we got this m-atx case. Full disclosure, before we get any further, FSP did send us this case as a sample. They didn't necessarily ask us to review this case, nor did they pay us or coerce us or anything else to make this review. So all of the opinions that we'll be sharing in this video will be unbiased and impartial. We like this case a lot, so we actually asked them if we could review it, and they said yes, and we asked if we can be unbiased, and they said yes, so here we are. We actually filmed this bit earlier in the week, but someone, I'm not saying any names, but someone may have screwed up the audio. So we're doing this bit again. You'll see us in different clothes, but the opinions have stayed the same regardless. So let's get going. I'll hand it off to Benji. Bye, guys.
The m-atx form factor has seen a lot of love in the last few years, and it's becoming a much more popular form factor. It offers many of the creature comforts of ATX motherboards while being in between the size of ATX and ITX. Generally speaking, m-atx motherboards are pretty cheap and tend to be a bit more cost effective than ITX builds, while still managing to be more compact.
Now, we've seen a lot of companies jumping into the m-atx space recently. We've got Lee with their Dan A3, which I'm personally running in one of my builds. There's also the Antex CX500M, a husky little fella that's pretty reasonably priced. The MSI Pano M100R, etc. Instead of name dropping cases for the next 10 minutes, I can just say that there are a lot of manufacturers in the m-atx space right now, but very few of them are doing true dual chamber curved glass cases. Now, being unique doesn't mean squat if the product itself is built like a matchstick house, and I am pleased to say that this case is surprisingly well built for the price.
The panels are flexible, but don't bend excessively. Now, it's no O11 in terms of its build quality and overall feeling. While the metal is rigid, it feels quite light and unsubstantial.
But considering some of the other offerings found in this price range, I'd say this is decent enough for what you're getting with your money. We've got the black variant here of the case, but it also does come in white. Just something I thought was nice, included in the box, they do give you this box, this storage case for extra hardware. It's kind of like what Lee does. It has dividers that you can spread according to your desire, and you get fabric Velcro cable tie downs, which I think is pretty nice. The curved glass itself is a two-piece that has a seam here, which isn't too noticeable, but it's definitely still there. When you're looking directly through the curve section, you will get some distortion, but that really just comes with the territory. The glass curves around the other side of the case for a symmetrical look, and around the glass is a black or white frame that surrounds the perimeter of the glass. You don't get any removable trays for fan insulation, so you just got to do it the old-fashioned way, but included is 3 120mm Infinity RGB fans, the two mounted on the side being reverse blade variants and the one here being just standard. These are very similar to the fans we looked at in one of our previous videos, except they aren't daisy chained. You get magnetic dust filters for the top and the bottom For radiator and fan support, on the side you have support for up to a 280mm radiator or up to two 140mm fans. In the top is space for a 360 radiator, and down bottom you can mount three 120mm fans. But if you're going to try to stick a radiator down there, you better have a very thin GPU, otherwise you're going to run into some mad clearance issues.
A shame though, you only get 160mm of CPU cooler clearance, which means bigger tower coolers like the Noctua NH-D15 isn't gonna fit in here. But it's just enough for smaller tower coolers like the Peerless Assassin. So be sure to check the height of your CPU cooler beforehand.
For the front I/O, you get two USB Type-A 3.0 ports and a USB Type-C port, a headphone and mic input, power button, and a reset switch. You do also have support for up to two 3.5-inch drives, but the storage tray on the back of the motherboard can actually only support one 3.5-inch drive. The other mounting location is here, which, I mean, yeah, you could technically mount a hard drive here, but you shouldn't, because it's not very cash money to have a hard drive exposed at the front of your case. You can also put two 2.5-inch drives in that back section or in that front section if you're feeling just really freaky. Don't do it. Please don't do it.
The back compartment is quite spacious. However, there's very little aid for cable managing, so you're kind of on your own here. For size, this case is on the bigger side of m-atx cases, standing 368mm tall, 285mm wide, and 460mm long. This case is more similar in size to the O11 Mini, being only about 1 centimeter shorter, but both wider and taller than the O11. The O11 Mini, however, supports up to 𝐒𝐴TX motherboards.
Where is all this extra size coming from if it doesn't even support ATX motherboards? Well, this is where I think some of that cost cutting is peeking its head through. The O11 Mini, while supporting ATX motherboards, does have some caveats, but it also undoubtedly has a lot more money spent in R&D to put everything together. Now in the O11, they really crammed the ATX motherboard in there, so when you put one in, there is very limited space for cable managing up top and bottom, and there is a bit of overhang on the side. They really squished the ATX form factor in there. This doesn't go through that trouble, just purely supports ATX motherboards. And you know, it's honestly, it's pretty big. It's not small. It's not a small case, but $80. There are gonna be some trade-offs on both ends, and what it's really gonna come down to is that cost. The curved glass element at the front also takes up a bit of extra dimension, protruding out just a bit with the FSP logo printed subtly down here. This protruding section with the curved glass wraps around is plastic instead of metal like the rest of the case, which does stick out a bit in terms of texture and shade. It looks like a different shade of black. It doesn't really bother me all that much, but I can imagine it bothering other people.
Let's have a look at the heat dissipation situation going on in this case. We ran some tests playing the finals with everything maxed at 1080p on this Gigabyte 3080 Aorus. The results were pretty interesting. With 3 bottom fans installed running intake, the GPU temps were identical to not having the fans installed at all. Adding fans at the bottom doesn't seem to have much of an effect on GPU temperatures, but neither does it have any effect on the overall cooling performance of the case. We ran simultaneous stress tests on CPU and GPU. We found very standard temps on the 7700X and the 3080, with the 7700X running at 96 degrees and under full load, which is pretty typical for this chip, and the GPU at 62 degrees, all in all, very acceptable.
The panels here are not toolless. They're actually quite finicky to put on and take off. The screws that keep it in place are also non-captive, and I've had a lot of times where I've unscrewed it and they've just popped off and fallen into the ground and I haven't been able to find them. To put the panels on, there are these little latches that you have to line up pretty perfectly, otherwise the panels won't go in, which can be quite frustrating. The front glass requires you to unscrew these 2 bad boys down here in order to remove. While it's not exactly required in order to build in the case, it's just that extra bit of annoyance to strip the case down. We also encountered a problem with the fans at the bottom making a rattling, scratching noise. The bottom of the case was making contact with the bottom fan. At lower RPMs, it wasn't a problem, but as soon as we started the games up and the fan spun up, it makes a quite ear-grating, unpleasant noise. After some testing where we swapped out these fans with a different set, the problem disappeared. Now the fans that cause this problem are the ones that are in here, the Installer V2 Infinity fans that we reviewed some time ago. It didn't come up back then, but the thinness of the rubber strips on the fans weren't enough to prevent them from coming too close to contacting the bottom of the case. We've never encountered this issue with these fans before, but I think it's worth considering. If you're planning on installing fans to the bottom of this case, make sure that the fans you have are sufficiently raised, otherwise you may encounter the same issue.
If you have a pretty chunky graphics card, we wouldn't recommend putting 3 fans down on the bottom. The clearance between this 3080 and the bottom fans was also a little concerning. Without any anti-sag brackets, bigger cards are going to see a slight decline, making the clearance between the fans tight.
Hello again, I'm back for the last bit. All the bad things aside, I think this case is still a ridiculous bargain for what you're getting with your money. It has good compatibility with cooling, the fan situation aside. That was more of a problem with the fans than the case itself.
It's quite a pretty case with that curved edge, and the price is just unbeatable in this category. I think you can't go wrong with this case, and it offers up some serious competition in the space.
Now this case released very recently. You can follow us on Instagram to be notified when these cases will be in stock.
We'll also be making some great value pre-builds with this case, so be sure to check out our website, link below.
And I think that about does it. Thank you all very much for watching. It was very cash money of you to join us for this video. Like if you liked, dropping us one of those cool little subscriptions, and with that,
see you next time.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. It's gonna stay there.
Oh, do you want me to?